The movie is set in Los Angeles, around the time of Christmas. The city is adorned with Christmas decorations, and among the hustling, bustling life, there is the main protagonist of the story, a young office assistant named Kristen. Kristen works for Melanie Charles, the CEO of a global PR firm. Since it's the Christmas season, the firm is packed with work. Melanie is seen ordering her employees around, and they comment that she has ice water running through her veins. But Kristen says that Melanie is right. The photographer, Josh, is surprised that a girl who has been new in the industry knows so much about it. She says that she is new, but plans on making a long career, and leaves. While Kristen is working hard to make her mark, on the other side of the world lived her Prince Charming. A handsome, but reckless young man, Prince Patrick of Edgemore. His father, King Frederick, is worried about him regarding a new scandal. He asks Patrick about his flings, he laughs in response and calls it harmless fun. Frederick then asks about the charity ball Patrick was supposed to attend, but he never showed up. He has always dodged each responsibility entrusted to him, but now he will go to America. Frederick tells him about a Christmas charity fashion festival they are sponsoring, in association with Dan Carson, and this year Patrick will host it. Patrick tries to dodge it, but King Frederick says that Patrick will have to prove himself as the heir to the throne. Back in Los Angeles, Melanie goes over the Carson Charity Festival with Kristen. She says that she doesn't want any fiasco like last time, because if the festival is not a hit, Mr. Carson will have her head. She then orders Kristen to make sure Josh has the campaign ready before tomorrow afternoon and leaves. Kristen sighs, but her thoughts are interrupted by her coworker Jill. She says to Kristen that the Christmas holidays are tough, but planning a show on top is tiring. Kristen advises her to show her original designs to Mr. Carson, because she should be the one designing campaigns for them. Kristen spots Josh and excuses herself. She questions Josh about what is he doing goofing around, and says that no one wants to be unemployed during Christmas time. Josh laughs at her and offers her to team up with him to take over the company. She rejects his offer and leaves. Later the same day, Melanie meets with Dan Carson, who hands her a business card and tells her about his friend who makes handbags. He then says that he recommended her to him, and she will need to go to Boston the next morning for a meeting. Back at the office, Melanie tells Kristen that she will need to do overtime and look after her dog, Falker, since she is leaving town for a few days. Kristen is a bit shocked because the Edgemore ambassador is due in a day, but Melanie says that Kristen would be the one entertaining them until she is away. Kristen starts to panic because she doesn't have any experience with the royal family, but Melanie orders her to calm down since the ambassador isn't from the royal family, and she will be good. Kristen thanks her and leaves. She goes over to Jill and tells her about the bombshell Melanie just dropped on her. Jill sympathizes with her and offers to keep her company for the night. Later at night, both girls bake cookies and watch a movie together. Jill is shocked because Kristen will have to babysit the ambassador and the dog until Melanie is away. Kristen is annoyed that Melanie doesn't see her real potential and what she can do if given the chance. Jill tells her that she shouldn't wait for chances, but make her own. Prince Patrick arrives in Los Angeles. Albert informs him that Melanie Charles would be their liaison over here. On the other side, Kristen takes out one of Melanie's dresses since she doesn't have anything appropriate to wear. She gets to the hotel, and Jill recognizes the dress she is wearing but comforts her by saying that Melanie would have wanted her to look her best while meeting the ambassador. The prince arrives and is greeted by Kristen, but he mistook her for Melanie. Kristen starts to panic when Patrick introduces himself as the Prince of Edgemore, because she wasn't expecting this. But she hides it well and smiles at him. Patrick addresses her as Mela, and before she could correct him, Jill also calls her Melanie. Kristen takes Patrick with her for a tour of the hotel, while Albert stays behind to manage the luggage. Jill offers her help to Albert, saying that he can call her if he needs anything, and then takes him to get settled. Kristen shows Patrick the hotel and he says that it is a whole little world, and he can also stay in as long as he wants. But she says that it's Christmas time, and they need to do some PR, but she'll make it as much fun as she can. After leaving the prince, Kristen goes to Jill and questions her about why she said that she was Melanie. She replies that Patrick is a prince and he would have felt insulted if he would have known that Melanie ran off to Boston and left him with her assistant. She then reminds Kristen to not mess things up, because it is her chance to show Melanie what she is capable of. Later at night, Melanie calls and tells Kristen that it snowed in Boston, and all the flights are canceled, so she is stuck here for a while and might also miss the show. The next day, Kristen escorts Patrick and shows him around. She takes him to the festival's venue. He asks her what types of charities she supports, and she replies that everyone supports charities that speak to them. He then tells her about the charity ball his mom used to host every year, and she is impressed by it. While they are talking, a woman approaches them and hands Kristen an envelope. She tells Patrick that every year they sponsor kids who can't afford to have a Merry Christmas, and the envelope tells who they would be sponsoring this year. She opens her envelope and finds that her Christmas buddy this year is Amy, and her address is the Children's Hospital. Back at the hotel, Patrick tells Albert that she is such a fascinating lady. He then gets ready and leaves for lunch. Kristen asks him what would he like to do for lunch, and he says that he would like to grab a sandwich, sit by the ocean, and just relax. They both go to the ocean side, and she takes out an Italian submarine sandwich from a picnic basket for lunch. He tastes the sandwich, compliments it, and says that the simplest things are the best. She then takes out an eggnog latte to complete the meal, and Patrick is stunned. After lunch, they both head to the children's hospital to meet Amy. The nurse tells her that Amy didn't have any visitors in weeks, so she will be happy to see them. Patrick asks the nurse about Amy's condition, but she replies that all she can say is that Amy needs a friend right now. They both go to Amy's room, and Kristen gives her a stuffed toy. Patrick asks her what she would like to do on Christmas, and she replies that she would like to leave the hospital. Patrick offers her to attend their fashion festival, and she replies that it would be great. Kristen says her goodbyes and leaves, but Patrick stays behind. Amy asks him if she is his girlfriend. He replies she is not and asks if she should be. Amy replies that Kristen is very pretty. In response, Patrick compliments her hair, and she tells him that they are not real, but a wig. He promises to be back soon and leaves. Later that afternoon, Kristen drops Patrick off at the hotel and promises to meet him tomorrow. After he gets out of the car, she gets a call from Dan Carson. He questions her about Melanie and if everything is on schedule or not. He says that he has heard great things about her, and she promises to not let him down. Later at night, Kristen says to Falker that she thinks Patrick likes him, but the problem is that he thinks that she is Melanie. The next day, Josh is out shooting with the models when he hears Albert and Patrick talking about Melanie and the day she has planned. Josh is a bit intrigued because he knows that the real Melanie is out of town, and Kristen is the one in charge. Kristen goes to Jill and says that she can't keep pretending to be Melanie anymore, but Jill ends her worries by saying that she is doing great, but she can always tell him. Kristen agrees and says that she will tell him when the time is right. She then leaves for the day. She finds Albert and asks him about Patrick, who is late because the Christmas tree lighting ceremony is in 5 minutes. She goes to find Patrick herself and finds out that he went gift shopping for the kids at the children's hospital. Kristen is impressed by his gesture and compliments his generosity. They both then leave to attend the public events they had to attend. Josh sees the broadcast of the tree lighting ceremony, calls Melanie, and asks her to turn on her television. She is shocked to see the Prince of Edgemore instead of the ambassador. She asks why didn't Kristen tell her, or else she would never have left the town. Later at night, Kristen gets ready to confess that she is not Melanie Charles when she gets the notification of 2 missed calls from Melanie. On the other side, Patrick is getting ready for his evening meeting with the supposed Miss Charles. Albert comments on his friendship with Melanie, which is a bit shocking because the ambassador used to call her cold as ice and all business. Patrick says that she is nothing like the girls back at Edgemore and everything he has been looking for. As he leaves for his meeting, Albert also leaves behind him for his meeting with Jill. Patrick and Kristen go out for the night and sip Merlot while music plays in the background. He apologizes for taking up all her free time, but she laughs it off, saying that it is her job. She says that she has been meaning to tell him something very important, but he asks her to hold the thought because he would like to dance. They both get onto the dance floor and slowly dance to a romantic Christmas song. He compliments her dress and says that she gets lovelier every time he sees her. Right when he leans down to kiss her, Josh interrupts them. She is shocked to see him, but he tells her that he was invited and points at Melanie, the real Melanie. Kristen starts to panic, and Patrick stands there confused. Melanie joins their little party and compliments Kristen's dress. Patrick is confused, so Melanie says that he has been a part of a little prank and that she is the real Melanie Charles. Patrick is shocked and says that Kristen lied to her. She starts crying and says that she didn't and she had been trying to tell him but never got a chance. Patrick gets angry and says that she made him look like a fool. Kristen apologizes and says it is not like what he thinks. She never meant to harm anyone. But Melanie interrupts her by saying that she did harm someone and is now fired from her job. Kristen apologizes one last time and runs out of the restaurant crying. After she leaves, Patrick questions Melanie about whether firing Kristen is necessary. She replies that she deceived everyone and deserves to be fired. Melanie then offers to have a conversation with him, but he refuses, saying that he should have known that Kristen was far too kind to be Melanie, and leaves. Later that night, Kristen cries and binge eats ice cream. She remembers all the moments spent with Patrick and cries a bit more. Patrick goes back home and says to Albert that he can't believe what has happened. Albert says that it's all his fault, because he suspected all along that she wasn't Melanie, and his suspicions were confirmed by Jill. Patrick gets furious at him for knowing everything but still not telling him. At this, Albert says that they both were happy together, so he decided to keep quiet. Patrick says that now he will never know for sure if Kristen was trying to tell him the truth. Albert says that there is a way, but he is dismissed. Before he leaves, Patrick tells him that he liked Kristen, not because she was someone important but because she was a breath of fresh air. After he leaves, Patrick thinks of the mess he is in. The next day, Kristen goes to visit her Christmas buddy, Amy. She gives her a present. Amy unwraps it and finds a book inside, called A Prince for Christmas. Amy looks at Kristen and says that she looks sad, and tells her that she stays happy by taking a negative thing and making it positive. Amy then asks her about her prince, and with pain in her eyes, she replies that he is busy. She then tells Kristen that he really liked her, and he might even be in love with her. Kristen laughs, but Amy says that no one is ready to tell the truth, so she observes how they look, and she can even tell what Kristen feels. Kristen smiles and asks her to not tell anybody about how she feels and leaves. At the hotel, Melanie meets Patrick and apologizes for the last evening. He says that he feels really bad for what happened, but she says that she should have handled Kristen more professionally. He says that Kristen did an excellent job, but Melanie says that she got what she deserved. He asks if he will get a chance to meet Kristen before he leaves, but Melanie tells him to not worry about her. They both then go to meet Mr. Carson. He asks Patrick if he has been handled well, and then compliments Melanie on being a wonder. Melanie starts to speak, but Patrick asks her to let them both have a private conversation. A bit shocked, and with a tight-lipped smile, Melanie leaves them. After she is gone, Patrick tells Dan Carson about Kristen that she lost her job, and he was hoping that Dan could have a word with Melanie. Dan looks at him and asks if Kristen knows what Patrick feels. Patrick says that it is nothing like what he thinks. It is just that Kristen is very good at her work. Dan looks at him, laughs, and says that it wasn't the answer he was expecting, but love is a magical thing. He then says that there is a better way to help Kristen and he will know about it when the time is right. They both shake hands, and Patrick leaves. He goes and finds Albert and Jill having a conversation. Albert asks Patrick how the conversation went. He replies that it's not good, but he will have to do something to fix it and he will make things right. Patrick then leaves, saying that he needs some advice. Later, Kristen is at the office, packing her stuff, when Jill and Albert arrive. Jill asks if she needs any help, but she replies that she is done messing up her life. She then says that she will go back home for Christmas, because nothing is keeping her in Los Angeles. Jill apologizes because all of this is her fault. Kristen starts to cry and says that even only for a moment, she felt really special. Melanie hears some voices while leaving the office, and stands by the door to listen. Kristen says that she knew all of this was wrong, but all she wanted to do was a good job, for Melanie to be proud of her. She says that if only she had told him the truth, all of this would never have happened. Jill sighs and asks her to not be so hard on herself, because Melanie wouldn't have done it better than her. Kristen replies that even though she did a good job, now she has nothing. She is unemployed and broke, and Patrick hates her. At this, Patrick steps in and says that the prince doesn't hate her, but is as miserable as she is. Kristen laughs, but her laugh is tainted with tears, and she says that she is the biggest fool. Patrick goes to meet Amy but finds her hospital bed empty. He looks around and finds the book Kristen gifted her on the bedside table. The nurse arrives, tells him that Amy is with other children, and takes him with her. He meets Amy and hands her the gifts he bought for her and her friends. She hands out the gifts, and it turns out that they are one present short. So, instead of keeping the last present to herself, Amy gives it to her friend. Patrick is so touched by her gesture and asks her about it. She replies that her friend doesn't say it, but she is very lonely inside. Patrick comments that Amy is very wise, with a pure heart. Amy tells him about Kristen's visit, and that she seemed sad. She says that he should go and tell her about his love. He replies that he maybe loves her, but she says that there is no such thing as maybe and he should confess his love before it is too late. He replies that it is difficult because he said some unkind things, but Amy tells him that he is a prince and can fix anything. The next day, at the Christmas Fashion Festival, people start to arrive and enjoy themselves. Albert goes to Patrick and asks if he is ready or not. He then asks him to not feel sad because things have not been this bad. Patrick replies that he met the girl of his dreams but lost her quickly and he is a royal idiot. But Albert tells him that their visit is not over yet, and he has also done what Patrick asked for. At the festival, Josh clicks pictures of the guests, and Melanie welcomes them to the King Frederick's 10th annual Christmas Fashion Festival. She then introduces Prince Patrick to the guests, and everyone claps. Patrick smiles and looks around for Kristen. Albert wishes him good luck, and leaves. Patrick goes up to the mic and addresses the people. He thanks the people and Dan Carson for co-sponsoring their event. Carson sits next to Melanie and congratulates her on the successful show. He then asks her about Kristen, and she replies that Kristen couldn't be with them due to some work. Carson looks at Melanie and comments that he really likes Kristen and that she works efficiently. Patrick then says that he would like to introduce someone special. He welcomes the honorary Princess Amy of Edgemoor. Amy comes on stage and Patrick lifts her in his arms. He then tells that the donations given by people go to Amy and her friends in the children's hospital. Everyone applauds and Carson compliments him by saying well done. Amy then reads the final card handed to her by Jill and announces Kristen's name. She gets on the stage and Carson says to Melanie that Kristen's dress is very pretty. Melanie nods and he asks her to not pretend because he knows that she fired her. She apologizes and says that she lost her temper when she found out that Kristen didn't tell her about the arrival of the prince, and fired her. Kristen gets in front of the mic and says that this event is more than a fashion show. It is the celebration of the human spirit. She says it's not about us as individuals, but about us as a community. She thanks everyone for contributing to making a difference and leaves. Dan, Carson, and Melanie go after Kristen. At first, she apologizes for speaking in front of the guests, but Dan asks her to stop being silly. He then says that he would like for her to work on his team, but Melanie says that Kristen works for her as the vice president of strategic marketing. Kristen is shocked, but Melanie leaves her saying that they will talk about it the next day. Kristen starts to leave the event, but Patrick stops her. He apologizes to her for not listening and then confesses his love for her. He asks her for one more chance. She laughs and agrees. At the same time, Albert arrives and tells them that Amy's doctors gave them the news that she is going to be fine. Amy then shows them the present she brought, a mistletoe. And under the mistletoe, Prince Patrick of Edgemore and Kristen have their first kiss.